Today we're going to welcome back Dr. Kevin Walthers from the Allan Hancock College. He's joined us. And today we're going to go a little deeper with another session with Kevin, focusing on community engagement and looking at rethinking college. This is going to be an interesting dialogue, Kevin. I can't wait to hear you explain this one because we're talking about author Karen Klein, who was with you recently, I know, on the campus. And there's an article that she wrote called California Needs to Break Down the Walls Between CSU and Community College. You and I have talked about this already, right? And everybody knows we need to do that. This is urgent. But then it goes on and explains that Karen also wrote a book about rethinking college, a guide to thriving without a degree. Okay, Kevin, I'm turning this one over to you. Help me understand where her direction here, and how that helps us all work together in engaging our community in education.
Well, it was kind of a funny story because when she when I saw that article about we need to expand the ability of community colleges to offer degrees, it was like, oh, this is perfect. We need to invite this she's an LA Times editorial member. Let's get her up here and show her what we're doing at Hancock College. And she wrote back and she said, that's great. I'd love to come up. And she goes, maybe I could do something. I'm on a book tour and I'll be coming through. And the name of my book is How to Thrive Without a Degree, or the Guide to Thriving Without a Degree. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's not the message we want to send. But, we're open to having conversations. And actually what her book is more about is how to thrive without a bachelor's degree. And when you read the book, what you see throughout the book are careers that don't require a bachelor's degree, but do require some sort of training, some sort of education, higher education that starts at the community colleges. She tells stories about all kinds of different people who've managed to be successful without a degree. And so, she and I actually had a community conversation, which is good. And I said to her, here's what I say is like, you say you don't need a degree. And what I say is welding is college, machining is college, automotive technology is college. Okay, those. So we were really saying the same thing in a different way. Hers was a little more provocative because she's got to sell books, and but we spent the day with her, and it was fascinating to see her interact with students, to go out. We took her out to our industrial technology area where she saw students in the welding lab, and they showed her how they were making Santa Maria barbecues, and then we took her to the auto body. We have a new auto body faculty member. We had 24 students out there working on cars, and some of them being painted, and just were beautiful examples of what they're being trained to do. So it was a great conversation. And when we think about I think she was coming from a place of when people think about college, especially she's from a similar demographic to us. She's a little bit older than me, probably younger than you though, Eddie. But
most everybody is, Kevin.
But she's coming from a place where it says, when they talk about college, they're talking about four-year university. So because you want to be a police officer, got to go to college. You want to be a nurse, got to go to college. You want to do any number of things. You want to be a dental hygienist, you got to go to college. You don't have to go to a four-year college, but you're going to have to go get training somewhere. Yeah. And her book is very clear about that. Actually, it's that you're not going to just walk in and all of a sudden you're a podcast producer, right? You got to learn how to do some things, and maybe you can learn how to be a podcast producer on your own. But somewhere along the way, you've got to figure out, how does technology work? How do we get all these things to work together? And that's what a community college does.
Interesting. You talked about some of the anecdotes in her book. Is there one that stood out to you that you can share with us?
I think the one that for our college in particular was great. She had this great story about a guy who was kind of trying to figure out what he wanted to do when he was young, and he got into sound engineering. And he wanted to do sound. He wanted to kind of work on films and things like that. So he actually, it's kind of an old school thing, and I don't think this happens maybe as much as Karen does. But he kind of walked in and was like, "Hey, just let me learn how to do this," and somebody hired him. And I don't really think that happens much anymore. But he worked his way up, right? He learned all the different sound stuff. He ended up with his own company that, movie studios and TV studios all across Hollywood were coming to him to do this. Well, so he spent years building that skill set. Could have got that in 1 year at PCPA, right? If he'd have come to
Right.
PCPA, we would have got
Yeah.
him, and he would have learned how to do the sound and the
Yep.
lighting and all the things it takes to put on a production. So that's why I say when you stop and think about it, you don't, you know, and this is what her book is about. It actually has a nice guide in it. What do you want to do? And then figure out the path on how to get there. And for so much of the things that she identifies in that book, the pathway is through the community college.
You know, I read that article before I learned that she was coming to meet with you guys. And I'm sorry I missed that presentation. I wish I could have made that. But I read the article and I thought I might have written to you right after, as a matter of fact. There's a couple of things I ran across a couple of months ago, and I wrote to you, I text you like, hey, have you read this? So you got it. And it's wonderful that we have those opportunities to bring different perspectives. You know, in our partnership with the community education side of the school, we run the volunteer income tax assistance program with you guys, right? I can't tell you the number of folks who have gone through that program, been trained by us, been certified, received their certificate from you guys, get certified by IRS, and then go on into work in the sector, either as a bookkeeper or a tax preparer. And then there was one young fella, and this goes back, maybe it was post-COVID. He was really creative. This guy comes through as a client, gets his taxes done, got a really big tax return because he's got a couple of kids, but it was post-COVID. He was out of work. He took his money and he bought some equipment and he went down to Lompoc and he solicited a few businesses to do some advertising on the back of that big abandoned drive-in thing, right? And on any given Thursday or Friday night, you can see this fella's work where he's advertising businesses as people drive into town and they see this lit up. Really creative. He's now a volunteer in our program. So I want to thank you for the partnership that we've had over the years. I think, you know, the other side of this, because I have to share this, it's not necessary for the degree. It's necessary for the education, as you were saying. It's the education. And sometimes, you know, I don't have a degree. It's probably surprising to some folks. I've been the executive here for 18 years. What happened for me and a lot of folks like me is, you know, we came out of the era in the 70s, and, you know, there was a family business. So I actually got a great education in the family business, and helped my aunt and uncle run their business and build it. And it was time to go on my own. Boy, the school of hard knocks will teach you real quick.
That's right.
Oh man. So, you know, learn some great lessons, and coming to Santa Maria, launched another business when I got here. And then this opportunity was presented. I reflect back on what I get to do with the United Way, and I say this, and we talk about this on staff a lot, is this is what we get to do.
Right.
You know, and I think in your area of expertise in education, this is what we get to do. My wife was a teacher for 30 years, and she had the same philosophy. This is what we get to do. We impact people's lives. So I want to thank you for joining us in this series of podcasts, Kevin, and ask you for some closing comments. Maybe talk a little bit about what you see for the future of Hancock College, because technology is changing us all so quickly that we can't keep up with it. Where do you see us going?
You know, what I see us being a leader in is continuing to teach critical thinking skills and helping people become lifelong learners, that they're going to be able to see the next thing and adapt to it and really understand how to learn, because that's going to be the key going forward. We still believe that credentials are valuable, whether that's a certificate saying that you can be a nurse, or that's a degree saying that you're eligible to transfer, or it's a 4-year degree that we hope to offer at Hancock. We think those you know, a lot of the technology people talk about these badges. They want to say the badges are so cool. This is the next thing. We've been doing badges for years. We just call them certificates.
Right.
And then that way, when you go to an employer, and especially today in the online employer, you know, having that credential is going to be really important going forward.
Yeah, no, I wasn't discounting the need. Things have changed so dramatically since I came out of high
Right.
school, right, and went into the family business. I mean, I'd been in the family business before I graduated high
Right.
school, so it was something that it was ingrained in me. How to run a small business.
Right.
You know,
Well, it's different. It's different. Um, I'm on the back end of that, generational divide. But if you grew up in the '70s, you didn't need a degree. Most people didn't have high school graduation was still not a norm, right? That was not necessarily a thing people did. So you could get jobs. You could move up the ladder, and you could learn through the School of Hard Knocks. But once we got into the late '80s, the early '90s, that credential and that piece of paper became so important as the gateway. So if you're not going to be an entrepreneur,
Yep.
that piece of paper becomes really important, and it's more important today. That doesn't mean it's the only way. The real key is deciding, where is it you want to be, and finding the best way
finding
to get
that
there.
path,
Yeah,
and getting
Yeah.
assistance to get there.
yeah.
I wish I could say that I'm a child of the '70s. That's not quite true. We have to go back a little while, but
But you were
at
a
any
young
rate,
adult in the
I am.
'70s.
I am so young. I just keep going, and you just said something that truly resonates with me. Lifelong learners,
Mhm.
right? I have continued to learn. My last class was just completed at Cornell, Cornell, 3 years ago,
Mhm.
right? I've been pretty good at running businesses. I've
Yeah.
built 4 of them and sold them. I've been here for 18 years, but I haven't stopped learning. And I think that's the important thing when I talk about on our staff, when, like Jacob, our podcast producer here, he'll be joining us as a full-time employee with the United Way system. And my vision that I have for Jacob, it may not be his, but for me, where I sit is he'll be with the United Way system for the next 30 years. And he will grow in his expertise because we're going to help him along that way. Where do you turn? Continue to get an education. Don't stop.
Right.
Just and read.
Yeah. Lots of reading.
Read. Please, everyone, keep reading. It's been a pleasure to have you with us, Kevin. I really appreciate the time we've had together. I hope to have you back in the future, and we'll talk about some different aspects of community engagement, but this has been good. Thank you again. This has been Community Voices with the Northern Santa Barbara County United Way. We'll talk to you next time.